Morning. I am James Quinlan Meservy, fantasy author extraordinaire, creator of creatures, embellisher of events, and firebrand, stories that kindle the imagination. And today we're trying something new with my friend Margaret Skeel. I said that wrong, didn't I?
Skeel.
Skeel. I know I said that wrong. With my friend Margaret, and we're going to go over the questions from the JQM literary chat feature that I post on my blog every week, and we're going to do it as an actual video this time. As my followers know, I absolutely am terrified of anything Stage Friday, so I'm all sorts of bundle of nerves and have been for the last 3 days since we set this up. But luckily, it's all of the attention's going to be on Margaret and her answers about her books and her favorite authors. So let's get started. Margaret, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Hi. Well, I was born in Oregon and grew up in California, trotted around the world, and settled in Australia. And that's where I'm doing this interview. It's actually Sunday morning here, not Saturday night, so you can be reassured that the world has not ended yet.
Quite a bit of travel. So tell us about your books.
Okay. Well, I'm a biologist and I'm a wildlife rescuer and I've been a science teacher for years. But I've always wanted to write, and starting in 2015, I've published a book a year. My first 3 books were just e-books, but I'm now getting real books printed. And my latest book is called African Sorceress, A Warrior is Forged. And it's based on an oral tradition story I heard when I was in Ghana in 2014, and I was taken to the slave castle, and it was quite confronting what was done to the African people. But my guide said that his particular tribe had been saved by a great prophetess who had saved the people by magic, protected them by magic. So I came home and that rolled around in my brain, and then I did a course in fiction writing, and the guy said, "Oh, you need a character that you can carry from book to book, a heroic character that can go on." And my Kisa Can, I'm now working on the volume 2, The War Against the Slave Masters, when she rampages around with an army killing the slave masters. So, does that explain it?
Fun. That sounds awesome. You kind of already discussed this, but it says the next question is, what influences you to write your current genre?
Okay, well, basically it's the injustice that was done, and I kind of want to rewrite history, but I don't want to have to, prove my sources. I don't want a long list of references. It's not a PhD thesis. It's fiction. So if I want to say that Columbus got his idea of how to sail to America from the black African fishermen, I can say that, and I don't have to prove it. So my original genre was wildlife, and my first 2 books were wildlife adventures, but I'm really enjoying moving into historical fantasy.
That is far closer to my love. I write mostly everything fantasy. I love fantasy. That's awesome, and that's awesome. Historical fantasy, I love it. Being able to change your events.
Yes.
So
and not have to prove it.
Yep, I love that. Well, one of the favorite things that my wife and I love about fantasy, and not so much about science fiction, is in science fiction I have to give you scientific details as to why an event occurred. Whereas fantasy, it's just because I said so, and if that's not good enough for you, then I'll just throw in the word magic and we're covered.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you can do that in historical fantasy too. Bit of magic,
yep.
All covered.
Yep, it's awesome. So, who are some of your favorite authors?
I think you're going to like them. Tolkien, Heinlein, Ursula Le Guin, Kurt Vonnegut, Terry Pratchett, and Jack London. So the only one on here who wasn't writing either fantasy or science fiction is Jack London.
And I actually happen to be a big fan of Jack London. I became a huge fan of his after White Fang, and kind of read quite a bit of his things after that. Oh, yeah, a lot of those are some of my favorites as well. I just now got started on Terry Pratchett's Discworld series, so I'm pretty excited about that venture.
Oh, you will so enjoy the whole series. And when I got to my favorite books, I put The Last Continent, because that's when he brings Australia in, and it is so funny. I'm just in hysterics reading it.
So, what are some of your other favorite books?
Okay, well, and I wrote down here that as a teenager, I was really fond of Andre Norton. Teenage sci-fi. Are you familiar with her?
Not at present. I'm usually not very big into science fiction in literature.
Okay.
But I'm always looking to expand horizons, and I'll add that to my to-read list.
Okay, yeah, Andre Norton, and her books are short. Just pick one and have a go, because I think she's really interesting. Okay, my favorite book has to be Lord of the Rings, the ultimate fantasy trip, and I'm like the guy in the movie who played Saruman.
Okay, Christopher Lee.
He read the book every year for his entire life, so I'm not ashamed to admit that I read it every year too. So my favorite character is Frodo Baggins, because he's a little guy. He's like us, and he's faced with these terrible burden, and this and somehow, he just keeps putting one foot in front of the other, and he achieves his goal. And so I think that's really inspiring. But I've got to mention Ursula Le Guin's book, Left Hand of Darkness. Have you ever read it?
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
For the last 40 years, anybody asks me what my favorite books are, I always remember Left Hand of Darkness. And so I wrote it down on Thursday, and on Friday I was at school, and there was a copy on the teacher's desk where I was, replacing him, and I couldn't believe it. I haven't seen the book in 30 years. So it was meant to be. I stole it. I read it. It's great. It's just a wonderful book. It's you might remember her from the Earthsea trilogy.
Yeah, I'm familiar. I'm familiar with that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know it's called science fiction, but really it's fantasy. You'll love it. But The Left Hand of Darkness is like poetry. It's just brilliant. You have to read it.
I will.
Okay. Other books that really influenced me: Stranger in a Strange Land, Catch-22 by Kurt Vonnegut. And it occurred to me finally that my favorite books didn't all have to be fiction. So I put down Be Here Now by Baba Ram Dass and the Whole Earth Catalog, which you're probably too young to even remember. But
yeah,
before I migrated to Australia, I was in Canada, and I was in Alaska by that point, and it was this huge catalog of things that you could use to go back to the land and live off the land, but it also was full of stories and philosophy, and it was just amazing. And it really influenced me to come to Australia, buy some land in the bush, and live there for a long time, generating my own power, pumping my own water. We did it all. Back to the land. Okay.
All right, so that leads us to favorite literary characters. You already mentioned Frodo. Do you have any others you'd like to mention?
I keep jumping ahead, don't I? Well, I love literary characters that are animals. So the otters in Ring of Bright Water, the rabbits in Watership Down, and as a teenager, I just loved horse books. The Black Stallion, King of the Wind. Yeah. So my first two books, the literary characters are a platypus and a bilby.
Fun.
And there are in my latest books the sequel to African Sorceress. I'm finding that all these non-human characters are becoming real characters. There's a tree, the sentinel tree, and there's a pariah dog, Chaga, and yeah, it's really interesting the way things that aren't human are turning into real characters, if that makes sense. Okay. Yeah. And your next question is there anything you want to share with potential readers? And I don't know what to say there. I guess if you like animal adventures or historical fiction, try out my books.
Sounds great. And then we'll go ahead and post your social media links in the comments on the video as well as on the website.
Okay.
So that it could be found there. For where can we go to learn more about you and your literary works?
Yeah,
where do you have a presence online?
I have a web page, www.skeel.world. And then I have M.E. Skeel Author on Facebook. And apparently you can Google me now and find my books. I didn't ask them to do that, but you know what Google's like.
I haven't tried looking for myself on Google, but I am finding myself on Amazon on two different spots now. I've got I have a James Quinlan Meservy and James Meservy. I'm on both spots on Amazon now, so I have to figure out how to merge the two.
Yeah. I know I've got an author page on Amazon, but I've gone with Ex Libris now, so that I've just brought out my Bilby book again. I had a lot of trouble with the print on demand thing, so they're doing that for me. So I now have two books that are available not only on Amazon, but Kobo and a bunch of other sites, and they can be ordered as a paperback. And it's interesting that so many people, when I first started publishing, I thought, well, my first thought was nobody reads anymore. It's reassuring to find out that there are still people who read. And there are still people who don't want to read an ebook, that they're willing to pay the extra money to have the real book in their hand.
Yeah.
And I know when I got my first copies of African Sorceress, it felt so much more real than the ebook to have that book in my hand.
Yeah, you may not be aware of this, but I have a book releasing up here in a couple of weeks on June 4th. And I was able to get, that it's my second actual novel. So this is not a self-published short story, which I have like 5 of which on various platforms, but this is my second full novel. And we had those books arrive last Thursday, and it was a lot more emotional for me to open them up and hold that first copy of Denizens Among Us. Like physically hold that copy in my hand was a lot more impactful to me than just seeing the purchase link for the ebook on Amazon. And For me personally, I don't really matter if it's physical copy, ebook, PDF, whatever, so long as I can read it and love it. But I have, my mother and my mother-in-law both, my wife, they all prefer having the physical book in hand as well. They love having that physical copy and the experience of reading the book and turning the pages and all of it. I know quite a few people that have that. For me, it's more about just the story and getting into the story and loving the story, just so long as I have it.
Yes. But I agree with you. The impact when you open that box and you take your book out and it's a real book. It is very much different than just seeing the link on Amazon. So I get it. I feel the same thing.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your Sunday morning to join me, and I'll send this over to you as soon as I get it up. I'll send you the link on Messenger as soon as I get it up there. All right.
Okay, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
No, I had